Hi, I'm Ellen Snowenbus, the director of the West Bridgewater Library.
And I'm Michelle Sheehan from the West Bridgewater Public Library.
Michelle and I are here to tell you all about what's happening at the West Bridgewater Public Library this summer. We have an exciting theme called Libraries Rock. And the fun part of this was that we thought, what are the various ways we can kind of jump off of the word rock? Like in some ways it's music, rock and roll. In other ways, rocks are all around us. And then metaphorically, what is a rock in your life? So to start off, I wanted to tell you about the two contests we're hosting. Last year we hosted an essay contest and a photography contest as well. This year we're doing it again. Now our photography contest, which is open to everyone, is to spin off of the concept of all the different rocks we might find around southern New England. So what we'd like you to do is take a photograph of an erratic rock that might have been dropped by the glaciers millions of years ago, a rock in a park, a rock in a backyard, a rock you might have found on vacation. Take a photograph of a local rock outcropping or a specific rock, and either make it really a close-up or far away. You can put people in it, you can have animals or plants in it, whatever, and then blow it up to a size of about 10.5 by 8.5, and then you can submit it to the library, and we will put it into our display case, and then we will have some judges decide which person wins the prize, first, second, and third prize for the best rock photograph. Our other contest is a teen essay contest. Now last year was a really challenging essay contest. It was because it was Henry David Thoreau's bicentennial. We decided to ask teens, why does Henry David Thoreau, why is he important to us, in today's times? And that was challenging. We had a number of excellent kids who responded. This year's challenge is to say, who is a rock in your life? Now that could be a parent, a teacher, someone you really admire. It could be someone who's given you a lot of support. It could be someone who you just really aspire to be like. And then write an essay about it, about 500 words approximately, and submit it to us at the library. And I have my book group, my adult book group, will be evaluating the essays and again giving out prizes, first, second, and third prizes for that. And the essay contest is a cash prize. So the first prize winner wins $100. The second prize winner wins $50. And the third prize winner wins $25. So there's money at stake. All of the prize money has been generously donated to us by Mansfield Savings Bank. So we're very grateful to them for that. So we're really excited about the essay contest and the photography contest. And now Michelle is going to tell us about the events that are coming up in July. Michelle?
Thank you, Ellen. Yes, we do have a lot of programs coming up at the West Bridgewater Public Library. One of our first programs is on July 9th. That's a Monday. It's a summer reading program called Rockets, There and Back Again. This is presented by the Museum of Science, so you know that this is going to be a great program.
Definitely.
It's a 50-minute workshop in which the participants will be able to engineer, launch, and return vehicles from an imaginary space journey.
Cool.
Doesn't that sound amazing?
Yes.
So this is a STEM program, which is a really hot topic now, and it's funded by an LSTA innovation grant through the Museum of Library and Museum Services.
Right, we're so lucky to get that.
We really are. So this is going to be a really fun program, and I think Ms. Nanette has really outdone herself this year. We also have, coming up on July 11th, which is a Wednesday evening, our first classic movie night. This is a free and open to all event. And every month we're going to have a new classic movie.
Isn't that great?
So the first one we let Jed pick, because he's the new guy. And so he chose the movie Dark Passage, which, if you don't know, is a Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall movie. It's a 1947 Warner Brothers classic. And if you're unfamiliar with this film, you can go to our website and look at the calendar page and click on the link and get a preview trailer.
That's so
of that.
exciting, because I
is.
thought I'd seen all the Humphrey Bogart, Lorraine McCall movies, and that was
yeah.
one I didn't even know about.
Well, if it's Jed's favorite, I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fabulous.
He's a movie buff for sure.
He is a movie buff. That we've learned about him so far. So we are going to finish this month with our entomologist, Blake Dinius. He'll be in again on Saturday, July 14th at 10:30 in the morning to do a program called Unsung Heroes, Beneficial Insects. Now, the last time we had him in, he talked about wood ticks and not our favorite insect. So this time he's going to talk about some beneficial insects that we can find in our own garden.
And we may want to promote them in our garden, don't you think?
I think we will. So he's going to show us that. He's a prominent entomologist
It's so
in
great.
the area.
Yeah.
It is.
Have a real entomologist talking to us about bugs.
It is. And the last time he came was very well attended. He did a great job on that. So on July 17th, we're going to have a really busy day. That's a Tuesday. 10:30 to 11:30, we have the Easton Children's Museum coming in to present a program for us. So it's going to be called Vibrations, Absorption, and Variables.
Wow.
Waves, Sound, and Light. Discover the different aspects of sound and light waves. You'll be able to see, hear, and feel how they are transferred. Now, I really have no idea about this myself, so I'm really excited to see this program.
They always do a great job, though, don't they?
They really do. We're very happy to have them. So that's going to be a program that will investigate with shadows and colors and test the light to see if objects are translucent, opaque, or transparent.
Wow.
I know. So this is great for ages 3 to 7.
That's going to be great fun.
And that is funded by the West Bridgewater Cultural Council.
Oh, good.
So again, that's going to be a busy day. So in the evening, we're going to have a second Communities Classic Book Club. Last month, we read The Wizard of Oz, which was a great book, which actually I'd seen the movie at least 50 times, but had never read the book until before that club. So this month we're going to be talking about Alice in Wonderland. So we have books available at the library to come and check out, and we actually had pizza last time, so it was an enjoyable time. I think if you sign up for this program, you'll really have fun. And that's for all ages.
Oh, good. And you know, the fun thing about this classic book series, Michelle, is that these are books we feel like we really know well because we've seen the movies.
Exactly.
But, you know, when I've read Wizard of Oz for the first time before last month's book club meeting, I realized that I hadn't been familiar with the book.
I know. I was really pleased after I read that book because there were so many aspects of it that, like you said, I thought I knew The Wizard of Oz.
Right.
Actually, I didn't know anything about The Wizard of Oz.
It was so much more, the book was so much more violent than the movie.
It was.
Oh, my
gosh.
gosh.
There were a lot of, they did actually, I was very impressed with both the book and the movie, of course. The movie is a fabulous classic that couldn't do without.
And so many people have done different kinds of movies with Alice in Wonderland. It'll be fun to read the real book.
Exactly. It is. I'm looking forward to it. And it's not an imposing book. It's just a slim book. I think everybody will be able to read it very quickly.
That'll be fun.
So we have one more program to promote here today, and that's going to be on Saturday, July 28th. And that's going to be the 4th in our bug series with Blake Dinius. So in this time, he's going to come in and talk about natural pollinators that we can find in our own backyards. So this program is aimed at introducing people to the variety of pollinators that they might find around them, just walking from your car to your house.
Fantastic.
So we're going to review a lot of pollinators on that and find as well some of the challenges that these insects are finding and facing in today's world.
Right.
So we know some of the plights of the bumblebees and some of the other
things we can maybe do to help them.
Exactly. So he'll give us a lot of insight into what we can do for that.
That's great.
So now I'm going to turn it back over to Ellen, who's going to talk to you about our 2018 Hot Summer Reads.
Thank you, Michelle. As many of you know, every summer we spread out a cloth on a round table right by the main desk, and we buy multiple copies of a number of hot titles. And every year they just go like gangbusters. I mean, they're just so popular, it's hard to keep them on the shelf. on the table. But this year we have a particularly interesting group. And believe me, I couldn't even bring a copy of every single one from the table because I just had to be picky about which ones I highlighted. But just so you know, there are others on the table. The first one I want to tell you about, though, is called 12 Strong. Okay, many of us are old enough to remember the day of 9/11 back in 2001. And what a horrible experience that was to live through. And then what came out of that was the war in Afghanistan began. And I don't know about you, but I remember opening up a magazine and looking at a picture of an American Army guy sitting on a horse with a laptop on his lap. And I was thinking, what in the world is that guy doing? Well, it turns out he was one of these horse soldiers who was a crack team of Army guys who went out and linked up with the Northern Alliance in Afghanistan and ended up making a huge difference. It was a small group, just a tiny little group of Americans who made a big difference in the Afghan war at the very beginning. And so this book is the true story of how they managed to do what they did. As I recall, most of them had never even ridden a horse before.
Let me have that, because I think I'm going to check that out today.
I'll tell you, it's a real page turner. And again, you know, when you read a really well-written nonfiction book, it reads like you can't believe it.
Yeah.
And yet, truth is so much stranger than fiction at times.
That is true.
But it's really a story of heroism. Now, the next book I have to tell you about is called Confessions of a Domestic Failure. Now, this is not a heroic story at all, but it is one that I, and I'm sure you too, Michelle, can relate to as mothers. And it's a funny, frequently hilarious story of the first year of a young professional woman's life as a young mom. And she just is feeling so isolated. Her husband is working around the clock trying to make a living, and she ends up entering this contest. She enters on this blog of this perfect mom. She's she's chosen to be one of like 12 women to participate in this blog, online blog, and the woman who runs it every week has a different challenge, like, find ways to make yourself look beautiful, and find ways to connect with other young moms, and find ways to meet your husband halfway, and all this kind of thing. Anyway, but it's just hysterical. At the towards the conclusion of the book, they all meet up together in California, and it's just one laugh fest after another. It's just totally hilarious. It's a fun beach read because it's silly, although there were moments there when I could totally identify with her. It was really funny. Now, a more serious choice is the Colson Whitehead book, The Underground Railroad. This is a serious book, although it uses magical realism to make its point, and it gives you a very emotional experience of what slavery and the escape from slavery must have been like. The main character is a very young woman, Cora, who runs off with a friend of hers. They escape from their plantation. They try to meet up with people. Things go wrong. She gets separated out. She finds this actual underground railroad, which is this kind of fictitious, actual physical underground railroad. And she rides the rails underground and then pops up in a new place somewhere along the road to freedom. At one point, she enters a really weird, she becomes like a mannequin in a museum of slavery in Charleston, South Carolina, which is really bizarre. Anyway, it's a really fascinating read. It's been a bestseller for a long time, ever since he published it. I highly recommend it. It's a pretty heavy book, but it's so well written and so fascinating that it's a real page turner. Now, another book that is a nonfiction book. I read this quite a few years ago, and I suggested it as a hot summer read. This book is called Red Notice by Bill Browder. Now, a lot of you might have seen him on TV. He's been in a lot of talk shows because it's a story of high finance. Bill Browder himself is sort of a speculator, an investor, And he started out as a Wall Street maverick. He made a fortune on Wall Street. And then when Russia kind of opened up to Western investments, he sort of thought, oh, I bet there's money to be made. So he went to Russia, kind of naively, truth be told, and made some connections with hotshot Russian oligarchs, only to discover that things, the way businesses run in Russia is completely different from the way the businesses are run in the West, and nothing was ever on an equal playing field. Extreme corruption, nepotism, all sorts of things were going on. And he ended up having to hire a Russian lawyer, Magnitsky, who ends up, many of you might even already know the story, but Sergei Magnitsky ended up dead in prison. And of course the Russians said it was an accident, he had a heart attack, and this, that, and the other thing. And Bill Browder knows that that's not the case. Anyway, Browder ends up pushing through the Magnitsky Act in Congress to punish the Russian oligarchs and not let them move their money from Russia into the West to keep it safe. Anyway, this is another real page turner. It's got photographs in it, and as I say, you can follow him along, and your assessment of Putin and his Russian oligarch friends will be very timely. It is a very timely book, and again, it's not written by Ian Fleming. It's not a fiction. It is a true story by an American who witnessed it all. So that's kind of interesting. On a more local front, this is a piece of fiction based on a true place. This is a fun book that I found interesting. It's called The Island of Worthy Boys. Okay, it's a fictional account of two friends who meet on the streets of Boston. And if you're a Boston fan or know the city well, you'll recognize all the landmarks in the city. They hang out in Scully Square and South Boston and the North End, etc. Anyway, they get into trouble. Something terrible happens. They have to go. They have to hide, and through the help of a friendly prostitute, she puts a good word in with a minister who gets them. They end up posing as brothers, and they get placed on Thompson Island, which is where the Boston Home for Boys, it's called the Boston Farm School, was actually located. So although it's a piece of fiction, it's about a real place that housed real boys, and it was managed by this very wonderful man. What is his name? Anyway, I don't remember his actual name. The superintendent was Bradley. That was it. Superintendent Bradley, who was a real person. Oh. He and his wife ran the school and were very progressive about, healthy living and fresh air and exercise and study. They did everything they could. And then they also placed the boys, when they turned 14, in apprenticeships back in Boston.
Oh, that sounds
great. Which is really kind of neat. 1889. So it's kind of
historical local fiction.
Yes, historical fiction, but based on lots of local truths.
Yes,
which I always kind of love. Now here's another piece of it's not fiction. It's actually nonfiction. Our book club read this winter. It's called "Killers of the Flower Moon: The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI." Now, David Grann, if you are a reader of The New Yorker at all, you'll recognize his name. He's written a lot of major pieces in The New Yorker. He's a wonderful writer. And again, this is nonfiction that reads like fiction because he really gets into people's personalities, including J. Edgar Hoover, who I always thought of as kind of this bloated old man. Stodgy. Yeah. Well, once he was a young man and a very idealistic manager of the FBI. So the premise of this book is that in the 1820s, the Osage Indians, which they're talking about Kansas now, Kansas and Oklahoma. The Osage Nation is in Oklahoma, and they were pushed out of all the rich farmland, of course, and relegated to this scrub land, not worth farming at all, very rocky, undesirable land. Well, come to find out, underground was this enormous pool of oil. And lucky for them, the man who helped them write the deeds for their property was smart enough to say mineral rights included. That didn't always happen on a lot of reservations. It was just the surface. And so other tribes were taken advantage of. But the Osage Indians were allowed to keep the profits of their mineral rights.
Wow.
Well, I mean, there was this huge oil, this oil, just this enormous oil boom. And so they became rich. And did the white people in the area appreciate that? Of course not.
Of course not.
No. And they built these fancy houses. They were some of the first people in the town to buy cars. They sent their children to prep schools. I mean, it was really, it was amazing to see these, so often put down people be, wealthy and, make all these, based on their wealth, with all these decisions. Well, then things turn on them. One by one, they get killed off, frequently by poison, sometimes by, rocks to the head or whatever. No one seems to be able to find out who did it.
Really? That's tragic.
It was really awful. And the local, it was, Oklahoma was like a territory. It just had become a state. It was really, had just come out of being a territory. The local law enforcement was primitive at best, and it was very, it was just very incestuous. So at some point along the line, the FBI gets involved. J. Edgar Hoover appoints this really terrific guy, Tom White, who goes to Oklahoma and really pursues the truth. And it's a fascinating story.
That sounds fascinating.
It really is amazing. Again, another real page turner, and fun that it's actually all the people in the book. You can Google them. You can find out more about their lives because they're true. They're absolutely true people. So I highly recommend that. And it's believe it or not, a great beach read because you just can't believe it's really happening. It's just a real fun read and not terribly long. Okay, the second to last book I have to tell you about is one that my book club also really loved. It's called Hum If You Don't Know the Words. This was recommended to me by a patron. We had a hardback copy, and she returned it. She said, "Oh my gosh, this is the best book, Ellen." I was like, "Really? I've never even heard of it. I usually am up on all the reviews." So I read it. I recommended it to Mr. Silverberg, who also loved it. And then I recommended that we buy multiple copies for the book table because it's just a beautiful story. Now, this is fiction, but it is based on the student uprising in Soweto in 1970s in Johannesburg, South Africa. And it's the story of Robin Conrad, who's a little girl. She's white. Her father runs a mine. And she is just, very well-to-do. She's got a loving family, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, at some point or other, her father and mother are killed by an uprising by their black miners. And so she's left an orphan. Now, her mother has a sister who takes her in, but her sister's like she's a flight attendant, so she's like away all the time. So she ends up hiring Beauty Umbali, who is a South African woman who's come to Johannesburg to look for her daughter. Her daughter has disappeared. Her daughter is an older teen, and she worries that her daughter has become involved in the student uprising. And so she hunts, and then she says, "Well, I'll take the job of being a governess to this little girl as a way to stay there and continue to search for her daughter." So between Robin and Beauty, their lives are intermeshed, and they both need each other for different reasons. And events transpire, and sad things happen, and great things happen, and you feel for all of the characters in this story so profoundly because everyone, has just a kernel of goodness in them. So I highly recommend Hum if you don't know the words. It's a very uplifting story. It's about it really renews your faith in humanity in so many ways. So that's a great one. Now, finally, Michelle, I thought I'd break ranks a little bit from this Hot Summer Reads and talk about one of our paperback collection books. This is a romance by Robin Carr. My daughter had recommended that we buy some Robin Carr books for our romance collection. Now, we have a paperback collection right near the Hot Summer Reads, and a lot of them are Harlequin romances. Some of them are just regular paperbacks, but we have been collecting romance just because I think people really enjoy it.
They really are.
And talk about a beach read. You know, when you just want to relax, you know with a romance that there's going to be a happy ending. That's one of the premises of a romance.
Exactly.
There has to be a happy ending. People have to find the love of their life. And the thing with Robin Carr, this one is called What We Find, and it's set in the Rocky Mountains right outside of Denver. And it's about this woman, Maggie, who's a neurosurgeon. You know, she's living this rat race of a life, and she's got a boyfriend, and she's just had a miscarriage, and so she's grieving and mourning, and she takes time off and visits her father, who lives way up in the Rockies. He runs kind of a campground and a general store up there. Well, then he ends up having a heart attack, and she has to take care of him. And the very beginning of the book is like, sort of like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? So then finally things slide into more of a rhythm. And she really winds down. She realizes she's been living life way too hectic a pace. And of course, there's a handsome stranger,
of course,
who happens to be camping in the campgrounds. Anyway, it's a lovely story. And the thing is, it's actually written pretty well. It's not clunky. I expected it to be kind of clunky. No, she's a really good writer. It's somewhat formulaic, but sometimes in the summer you don't care.
That's right.
You just want to relax and kind of know that things are going to happen, work out in the end. So I do highly recommend this particular romance, but I also recommend if you're interested in romance and you just want a light read without having to do any heavy lifting, check out the other romances in our collection. So that's about it in terms of the books we want to talk about. Of course, we have all of the latest books. We always buy, all of the latest books on all of the lists and everything. These just happen to be books we have multiple copies of.
That's right, and they are flying off of that shelf.
They really are. What's great, though, is that they come back. I mean, the
turnaround
is quick because we do have the multiple copies. And if you feel like you haven't been doing any reading because you've been just running all year round and you happen to be going on vacation, take a couple books with you. Take something that you might find challenging. Take something that you might find just completely relaxing.
That's right.
Because I think a book is a wonderful way to escape, don't you think?
It really is, and the selection we have of fiction and nonfiction is spectacular.
Yeah, it's really a great mix.
It really is.
Meets the needs of all sorts of different readers. So come on down to the library and see what we have. We've got great events, we've got contests, we have books, movies, and a lot of things that you can access through downloadables as well.
That's right.
And if you don't know how to do some of the applications, Michelle is always there at the
Happy
desk.
to help.
And we can help you find ways for you to have a wonderful summer of reading pleasure.
That's right. We hope to see you there.
Yes. Take care and come on down.